the Creative Tech Show, where your inner artist meets your inner geek. Show number 006, Making a Living Selling Digital Art. Coming to you from the mountains of North Carolina, where your inner artist meets your inner geek. It's the Creative Tech Show with your host, creative technologist Chris Murray.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Tech Show, friends. My name is Chris Murray, your creative technologist. Here where we talk about all things tech and art. It's where your inner artist meets your inner geek. Tonight I have a special guest on the show, a friend of mine. His name is Adrian Wise, hailing all the way from the UK. I'm going to let him get in on that a little bit, where he's from and what he does. So welcome to the show, Adrian. We're glad to have you with us.
Hi, Chris.
So where exactly in the UK are you?
I am in Norfolk, which is the middle of nowhere when it comes to England. I am in the middle of farmland and greenbelt, but right on the east coast of Middle England.
Sweet. So you're out there in the sticks and making a living with technology and art. I have tractors for company during the day and helicopters flying out to gas rigs. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Amazing.
So I see nobody. I see tractors and helicopters.
All right. Well, and the occasional 3D artist at the conference or things that you go to, right?
Occasionally, yes. Right. When I venture out and I enter the big smoke.
Yeah, exactly. So tonight's show is about making a living with 3D graphics, and it could be making a living with 2D graphics. It could be making a living with graphic design. I think a lot of my listeners might be interested in your take on how you're making a living with 3D graphics. And tell me a little bit about your career arc. Well, first of all, tell me what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis and about your company, Graphics 834.
Well, what I do now is I create 3D assets now. And some of those are sold as 3D assets, but some of those are rendered out and sold as stills on stock libraries such as Shutterstock or iStock Photo or Fotolia. But originally, I was a product designer, and I started my product design career in Manchester. And I bounced between teaching CAD and 3D graphics and practicing as a product designer, designing medical and safety equipment. I ran a small studio which was funded by some European money to help really small businesses engage with the design process. So you had a company that sold things, but they wanted to make one of their own, but they had no idea how to do it. And so I had a nice little small team whereby we had people to help design their first product and prototype it and hold their hand and walk them through the process, which was really quite exciting because you kind of did everything right from sitting down with a client to design it, to drawing up the CAD data, showing them how it all worked, and taking them to a manufacturer and having it manufactured, and then giving them this one product, which was really kind of good. But then one afternoon, I was showing my girlfriend at the time what I was going to present the next day to a client, and she said, "You made those. We can sell those," because my girlfriend creates illustrations for stock libraries, such as Shutterstock, iStock, and so on and so forth. And so I started creating generic products. So one of the things you find is that advertisements can't have branded products in them, so they need a generic product. So I would design kettles, toasters, televisions, environments like architectural visualizations for them to use in their advertisements. And so I stopped being a product designer, where it would take me 6, 9, 12 months to see a project through, and started creating 3D graphics as well as teaching. And so I kind of went from practicing as a product designer and teaching product design to producing 3D graphics and teaching 3D graphics.
Right. So I understand the 2D, selling images and illustrations to Shutterstock and things like that. But what do you mean when you say 3D assets? You started off by saying, I make 3D assets. Do you sell those 3D assets? What happens with those 3D assets? What does that mean?
When I create a model of a thing, it's a 3D scene. So I then save it as all the different file types that I can save or other people might need to use because of whatever platform they're on. And then I upload it to a site similar to iStock or Photolia or Shutterstock, and one of the biggest ones out there is TurboSquid. And if you've got a lot of 2D graphics viewers, then they'll probably know of Creative Market, and they've just started selling 3D assets. So now you can buy my 3D models on TurboSquid or Creative Market or some of the other stores that are out there.
Really? Okay, that's pretty cool. And so this is how you're making your living then. So this is your...
This is how I make it. One of the things is when we started a family, we didn't really want to bring our son up in the big city. So it's why we then moved down, because I'm originally from Manchester, and we moved down to Norfolk and we live in the countryside. And I have a little log cabin in the middle of the countryside, and all I need is an internet connection and lots of power. So I've got my little log cabin and my desk and my computers, and I sit here and I create.
Sweet. That's pretty...
I create what I want when I want, and my son finishes school on Friday for Christmas, and I just take the time off and I'll go back to work sometime in January. And the great thing is my products are still on sale. They sold today, they'll sell tomorrow, they'll sell next week. It's one of those things. We make money on Christmas Day, even though we're not working.
Right. Awesome. So it's like they call that mailbox money.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool.
But we've been doing it now for 10 years. We have a massive library of images. I've got a substantial library of models that I have available for sale, and it's just a case of getting them online. One of the biggest hurdles I have being out here in the countryside is my internet connection's quite slow.
Right.
So getting the data out of Norfolk down the phone line is a tricky one.
Right. Wow. All right.
But yeah, we just sit here and we create and we work whatever hours we want to work.
Cool.
The flexibility of being self-employed.
Right. Okay, so that sounds pretty incredible. So when you're making these images and these 3D assets and things like that, what are your go-to tools for creating them?
Well, I've been creating 3D all my career. Every product I've ever designed, I've designed in 3D. When I first started back in the 90s, 3D CAD, as it is recognized now, was very new. But things were still done in 2D. What I started in back in the late 90s was an old program which came on a series of floppy disks called 3D Studio, which later evolved into 3ds Max. And I still use that today. I've been using it since version 1. It's my go-to tool. Everything works with it or can get plugged into it. There's not a lot you can't do with it. And I originally, when I first started, because I was producing generic products, I was still using the engineering software that I was using at the time. So I would then create my geometry, to use the technical parlance, in SolidWorks, and I would take it into 3ds Max to light it and render it to make it look like it was made of metal or glass or plastic.
Right.
But eventually I broadened what I was creating. And, I'd done 10 televisions and 20 kettles, and there's only so many things you can do that people need. And I started creating characters. But you can't create characters in an engineering software environment. It's not what it's for. And so 3ds Max has this massive tool set which you can use it to create virtual worlds, virtual products, or virtual people. Mm-hmm. And so I spend all my days in 3ds Max building things, people, things for people, spaces for things and people, and because they are going on sale for people to use, I don't know where it's going to be used. So when I create something, I can't rely on or expect my customers to have all the tools that I necessarily would use. So I don't use any external plugins. So if there's a tool that lets you make trees in your software of choice, that's fine, but I can't use that plugin to make a tree, because if I sell you the file that uses that plugin,
Right.
and you have got that plugin, then you can't use that tree without me collapsing it down and it getting all very technical and big. So I try and keep everything as generic and out of the box as possible.
What and you think that's the biggest? Let me ask you, what's the biggest biggest challenge in that process? You know, if you're making things that you don't know where they're going to go, what's the big challenge there? What is the biggest challenge, I should say?
Well, technically, it's a problem of my own doing, because I am here on my own. If I hit a brick wall, I have nobody to my left or to my right to work with. But as an artist creating things for other artists to use, then there are quicker ways to do things, there are better ways to do things, but that's like me designing a train, assuming everybody else is going to take the train.
Right.
You know, if you drive a car, then a train's no good for you. So I have to stick to what I can do out of the box. So there are products out there that will make beautiful trees, but if you've not got that piece of software, then you don't have all that ability that piece of software can use. So I can make you a tree, and then I can find ways to make that tree blow in the wind and have leaves and flowers or blossom or whatever. But there's always a better way. But if you just need a tree to populate a scene, then I can produce you a tree. But working on your own comes with so many sort of challenges. I mean, I'm not one for being lonely, sat in an office on my own. I have dogs for that. But if I have a problem technically, how am I going to get this to do this?
Right.
I'm in company of one. You know, my dog's not going to help me solve that problem. So I'm now in a position where I've been doing this for long enough. I have a little collective of friends on social media. You're one of them, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, we converse quite a lot. I pester you for how do I do this, and then, you know, if I have a rigging problem, there's a guy out there I call on all the time, and he's gracious enough to answer. If it's a texturing problem, there's a guy out there I talk to, and he'll get back to me. But the problem is, my rigging guy's in Canada, in Toronto. My texturing guy's in California, and that's 9 hours away. So I'm bound by time zones, and likewise I have friends that work on their own overseas, and I can guarantee you it'll get to 2 p.m. my time and Skype will go bing bong, Adrian, are you there? How would you do this? And we're like a little collective of independent guys trying to solve problems on our own. It gets challenging working on your own now and again.
What do you think was the creative epiphany that you had, or the thing, you know, in terms of making a living with 3D, what was the thing that happened that made you say, you know what, I can do this. I can make a living at this?
Because I started doing what I do now whilst I was still a product designer, and then I sort of realized that I can have more fun doing this because I'm not spending 9-12 months on a job seeing a product through from a drawing to a piece of plastic. But it was around this time, 9 years ago, I created a concept for a Christmas tree, and it literally took me 5 minutes. It was a tapered helix in chrome with some spheres on it as Christmas decorations with a star on the top. It took me 5 minutes to create it, and it's sold by the bucket load. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands. It probably made me around about $10,000 over the past 10 years for 5 minutes work. And when you see something like that like, it sold once, and then the next day it sold 10 times, and then the next day it sold 50 times. And because you've got it on sale on more than one site, when you start adding them up, it's like, this is a lot of money. I don't have to deal with plastic anymore.
Right.
I can just make pictures and things.
I think we just titled this podcast episode making $10,000 with 5 minutes worth of work.
Well, the thing is, I'm a Liverpool FC supporter. Okay, I support Liverpool Football Club, and one year I get an email from Liverpool Football Club about their Christmas merchandise, and guess what was on one of their products?
One of your pieces of artwork.
My spiral Christmas tree.
Nice.
I'm a Dallas Stars hockey fan because, believe it or not, we do play ice hockey in this country, just not a lot. I can't play it anymore because the county that I live in doesn't have an ice rink anymore, so I don't play hockey anymore. But I'm a Dallas Stars fan, and I logged on to DallasStars.com one day, and there was one of my characters holding aloft my generic Stanley Cup in his skates. These are the sorts of things that make you go, get in.
Right.
You know, I'm watching Arrow on cable TV over here, and all of a sudden one of my robots, because I have a thing for robots, I like doing robots, it's sort of my old life meets my new life.
Right.
And up on screen pops one of my stock images of my robot on screen on Arrow, and I'm thinking, wow, how many people will have seen that?
Right, exactly. All right.
And I get this all the time.
So that's really kind of like your gateway drug was your unintended consequences of your artwork. Is that
seeing here, there, and everywhere? I mean, I have a great story about when I was a product designer. The first thing I ever designed as a product designer while I was at college was a metal bar that was behind a body panel on a truck for a hand.
Right.
And you couldn't see it. It was just the bracket behind it. And I saw that truck that it was on the road one day in the car with my father. And he nearly crashed the car because I got that excited that I saw the truck that had the handle on. Because there's a little story. The driver of this particular truck was quite small and needed an extra handle to be able to climb on the back.
Right.
And so I had to put a handle where there isn't normally one, which meant it needed an extra bracket. I saw this truck on the road because I saw it. I put the thing on when it was made, and he nearly crashed the car because I flipped out in the car because I saw this truck. And my dad was like, what? And I'm like, that truck, the handle on the back, I did that. And he's like, what do you mean? So the bracket that holds that handle on, and he looked at me like I was from Mars. But it's just the rush you get when you see your work out there.
Right. So that's pretty interesting. And you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned, kind of working in isolation. You mentioned working remotely, having the career and lifestyle that you want because your business is 24/7, whether you're sitting at the computer or not. What is the one thing, if you could boil it down to, and I'm going to ask you the tough question here, boiling it down to one thing that is working for you creatively and or technology, the one thing that absolutely makes your life possible, what is it?
Well, I wouldn't have a life if it wasn't for the internet. When I chose my house, when I chose to move, the first thing I did was check the connection speed. And believe me, it isn't great, but it's just enough to survive. But without the internet, I couldn't work because I couldn't get my products from my computer out there to everybody else. But when it comes to what facilitates my life, it's the software that I work with. Without that, if you're a hobbyist and you want to get into it, there's pieces of software you can get for free. Mm-hmm. And you can experiment and you can try it and you can stick your toe in the water. But for what I do, to be able to create anything for anybody to use, this is the thing that, 3ds Max is... It's there on your wall behind you, Chris. It's what,
That's all right.
It's been around since day one. I've been using it since it was in DOS. I've never been given a reason not to use it. There's lots of other things out there. And I'm not saying Max is the best. It's just the one that can do everything I need it to do.
Where do you come up with all of your ideas? I mean, if you're doing like generic stuff, I mean, I guess, I mean, the list could be limitless. Where do you start on any given day or project, or, you know, how do you figure out what to do next?
I live by the calendar. So right now I've just finished up doing anything, because Christmas is such a big holiday. We produce Christmas content right the way up to December. There's no point me creating any more Christmas work now, because by the time it gets finished, uploaded and approved, it'll be time to shut down for Christmas.
Sure.
We don't work between Christmas and New Year, so all our New Year stuff's up. So for the last 2 months, all I've done is Christmas trees, Christmas decorations, boxes with bows. 2016, 2015, people pushing 15 out the way and pushing 16 in there. You know, you're driven by the calendar. A sporting event comes up and then you go nuts. Right. So the World Cup comes around and everything's got to be soccer. You know, the Super Bowl's coming up and I've got American football assets.
Right.
World Series comes around, I've got baseball. The Stanley Cup comes around, I've got ice hockey. And you just go and go and go and go. The Chinese New Year comes and you've got to figure out what it's the year of the what this year and
right.
do that. Something terrible happens in the world. And unfortunately, we're a business and you might think about images of bombs breaking through walls or buildings.
Sure.
You know, you can choose to get involved and do that and do editorial content.
I actually did that, as that was, you know, back in the day when I had my own boutique agency. One of our biggest clients was CNN.com, and that's exactly what we did was military based infographics, doing kind of the things that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it happens.
We saw this happen. There was an incident with a professional soccer player over here, and he took out a super injunction to stop the press talking about his private life. And it was in the news for days and days and days because it was a landmark ruling in the courts. And we tried it, and we did it, and it sold once or twice. And the effort it took and the speed in which it takes to produce it, upload it, get it approved, the news cycle's so quick now, we often can't respond. And do I really want to make money out of exploiting suffering? Not really. But,
right.
You know, some people do it, and there are agencies that have quick turnarounds for editorial content, but I like to go with the sporting calendar and the holiday calendar and back to school.
It's a much more positive outlook on life.
Easter, Valentine's Day, you know, these things. I mean, every year I have this ongoing battle with myself and come up with a new Christmas tree.
So it seems like, you know, there's a lot of these new ways to get, you know, places like Shutterstock, and I think people are finally starting to realize that just because it's on the internet, it's not for free. And, you know, I mean, there's still a lot of that. People want to steal stuff. I guess if you're doing 3D assets, it's a lot harder for them to do that. But what's, you know, with the advent of the internet and e-commerce and microtransactions, which is essentially, I could think, you know, what we're talking about here. You have places like, you know, the Unity Store and Creative Market and Turbo Squid and Shutterstock and Pond5, which is even getting into, I think Pond5 is getting into 3D assets as well. Where is this all headed? What does the future look like for these creative assets that are, you know, royalty free or whatever you want to call them?
It's an exciting time for me as a 3D guy. The two biggest game engines have now decided they're going to be free. The company that makes 3ds Max have just launched one of their own. And there are some exciting products coming on the market in augmented reality, virtual reality, holograms. And there's such a buzz about game engines, and it's not all about PlayStation and Xbox. I think if a HoloLens is an affordable product, and if your virtual reality game headset, whichever one you want to go for, becomes an affordable product, then 3D assets. Oops, lights went out. 3D assets are going to be more and more in demand. The minute you can get Windows 10 on your head in a virtual 3D space, people are not going to need 2D images for a web page on a 2D space.
Right.
They're going to need 3D objects. If your games are no longer going to be played on a 2D screen on the wall on your games console, but in a 3D space through a pair of goggles or on your tabletop, then you're going to need 3D assets and not 2D images. And I think providing that those products that are going to use those are an affordable retail price, then it's about to explode. If those products are priced whereby they become sort of like luxury items or niche items, then I think this could be like another 3D TV. I don't know what it's like over in the States, but over here in the UK, everybody kind of went 3D TV crazy for a couple of years. Our cable channels had sports in 3D. You could watch the golf in 3D. You could watch Wimbledon in 3D, and now those channels have just disappeared. So, you still get your 3D Blu-rays, but the mainstream television just kind of burnt itself out. And I think if your HoloLens comes in at $3,000 as opposed to $1,000, then that's going to be a game changer.
Right.
Some people are going to go, well, yeah, maybe not.
Right. Cool. What we're almost out of time here, but I want to finish up with just a couple of other things. Our listeners they may be doing this, and they may be interested in the business model. They may be interested in the specific tools you're using. What is your favorite free tool? Like Evernote or XNView or it could be anything. It doesn't have to be 3D. It could be. What is your favorite free tool that you love that you think our listeners would really like to learn about?
Honestly, it's going to sound really quite bland and boring, but everybody raves about the cloud at the minute, and the cloud this and the cloud that, and everything's got to be on the cloud. And the one thing that changed how I work with people collaboratively or work with clients are online drives. When I create my assets, I can quickly share them with other people very quickly using Dropbox and Google Drive on OneDrive. If I'm working with a client for a custom creation, the first thing I do is create a OneNote document whereby I can, when I concept sketch, I just save straight to the OneDrive. They can see it as soon as I put it in there. They can write on it. I can see what notes they've made. I can quickly iterate a model up, do a screen grab, put it in there. They can see it. If they want to see more, then there's a great website called Sketchfab, whereby you can put your 3D model in Sketchfab and they can view it and spin it round and look at it from anywhere. But for me, OneNote is the one that changed it when I was working with clients. Just having that ability to bounce back and forth. It sounds really. I mean, you'd think I'd come up with some great little handy plugin.
No, that's.
But honestly, OneNote is just like a lifesaver. I mean, I got a Microsoft Surface 2, and then I got a Surface 3 because it changed what I did. If you ask me for a piece of hardware, my Surface is just like permanently welded to my hand.
I'll have to have you on. Maybe you can come on for a second show where talk just about hardware and talk about the Surface. It's part of the creative process.
Surface. I've got a really clever 3D mouse, so I actually have two mice when I work, and most people can't get their head around how that works. So I'll definitely come on for a second when you want to talk hardware.
All right, yeah, we'll do that for sure. All right, because I use OneNote too. I bounce back and forth between OneNote and Google Docs, and it's I haven't really settled on one in particular, and believe it or not, I'm using old school Word for some things. So my favorite tools are like mind mapping software and stuff like that. But that's really kind of for that's kind of for.
There's a plugin for. I know I don't use plugins for Macs, but there's a plugin for OneNote which mind maps as well. Oh. And the one that sold it for me was the Surface, because I hit the button on the Surface and it opens OneNote for me, and it's there straight away.
Oh, there you go.
So it kind of like. It segues in that. Right. It just all fits neatly, and the great thing is with the Surface, it's not just a tablet. I can run 3ds Max on it as well. So I've created whole content on there.
Sweet. That's awesome. So my last question is a simple one: is how do people find you? Or we're almost out of time, so I want to make sure that people are able to check out your work, get your stuff, hire you. What?
By all means. The easiest way to find me is Twitter, because it's the one thing I'm permanently glued to. Right. I am vert_edge_face, or vert_edge_face.
Right. And I'll be putting all these graphics up on screen, so don't worry about, we'll get it right, and we'll also get it in the show notes as well. So find you on Twitter at vert_edge_face. Where are where are the different outlets for your products?
You can find, you'll find my 3D assets on TurboSquid and Creative Market. There's a new store opening tomorrow called Cube Brush. I'm helping them launch, because that's one of the things, once you start down this path, people find you and say, would you bring your portfolio to our new store? And that's great.
Great.
Because you get in at the ground floor. This happened with Creative Market. I got in on the ground floor, and I've got one of the biggest stores on Creative Market because I was there from day one. It's how we got going in the 2D images with Shutterstock. We were customer number 197, or should I say contributor number 197. They've now got millions.
Right.
We've been there since day one. You get in on the ground floor on these things, and you're there.
Awesome. Well, Adrian, I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's we got 6 hours difference from where you are and where I am, so it's probably pretty late for you. But
I'm a night. It's okay.
Right. So, anyways, thanks again to Adrian Wise from Graphics 834, and you can find his stuff in the show notes. I'll be putting some links to where you can find him and find him on Twitter. I'm Chris Murray for the Creative Tech Show. Thanks to Adrian Wise, and everybody have a great evening.
Be sure to check out our other shows at creativetechguy.tv. You can also find us on Spreaker and SoundCloud.